Welcome to On the Edge with April Mahoney Brains. Here, this is the spot where the conversation is pointed, the guests are sharp, and the responses are never dull. Welcome home, Brains. There's only one requirement to hang out on the edge, is that you open your big brain and close your small mind. Did you bring your thinking caps? It's time to put them on, because the conversation starts now. On the Edge with April Mahoney Brains. You're back at the spot, your favorite podcast on the planet, right here, next to your heart. The place where the conversation is pointed and the guests are sharp, the responses are never dull. We are down in Australia, Melbourne. We're going to talk about the perfect pitch. Have you heard that term before, Brains? The perfect pitch. It's used in a couple different ways. Some mostly talk about the perfect pitch when they talk about tune or your octave when it comes to music or when it comes to playing an instrument. But also it can be used as the perfect pitch when you're selling something, when you're trying to close on the deal, when you have the perfect conversation, when you're able to deliver with power, with punch, with force, with clarity. Also, the perfect pitch when you're speaking, when you are standing at the lectern and you're talking to hundreds of people, maybe 10 people. But what are you saying? What is the pitch? What is your vocabulary like? What is your presence? What is your voice tone, your inflection? We're going to talk to her about all three of those and a whole lot more. Welcome to the show, Rochelle. How are you, beautiful?
I'm good, thanks, April. How are you?
I'm good. Did I get all that right?
You absolutely.
I'm sorry. Rachel, uh, how are you today?
I am really good. The sun is shining in Melbourne, which is a little bit rare, considering we can have all seasons in one day here. But I'm happy.
Well, happiness is everything. So tell us a little bit about you and how you show up in the world.
Well, I am a voice coach, more specifically a voice function specialist, and I work with the mechanics of voices to produce better quality and more sustainable sound. And I work with both singers and speakers, and I have been doing that for many, many, many years now. And yeah, I feel very happy that I'm able to help people to the extent that I can.
How did you find yourself in this space?
That's a really interesting question. I go back about 30 years, April.
You don't have that far to go.
That was very quick. So yes, I was a piano teacher from my late teens, and I went to university and studied to be a music teacher. Halfway through university, my singing teacher asked me if I could look after a bunch of her students as she was going away. And I'd already been a vocalist at that point. But with my piano training, I had a lot of technical training and understood the value of technical training, but because I had only had singing lessons a short amount of time, taking on students, I felt very ill prepared. So I went on a journey to find, well, firstly, just to visit more teachers and more pedagogies that could teach me more about the voice and how I could help other people sing at that time, sing better.
Mhm.
And I eventually came across a teacher training program called Speech Level Singing, which I started my teacher training with, and that is based in LA in America. And then I moved on to the Institute for Vocal Advancement, and which is essentially the same thing, but much more comprehensive. And it took me a good 8 years to become an advanced accredited teacher. I had to jump through many hoops, including flying to America and teaching in front of a panel of master teachers. And I'm very, very grateful for that training because now I can help voices to the extent that I have. So when I started teaching people to speak, it was because, again, I just fell into it. Someone asked me to do a workshop for a bunch of teachers, school teachers who were finding their voices were really tired by the end of the day. And I thought, well, I've got voice function training. I've worked really hard for that. And I just pivoted my knowledge, and that was a really, really successful workshop. And the sense of satisfaction of that I felt, feeling that I'd helped everyone, and the questions they were coming up with and the solutions we were coming up with was just really, really great. So I thought there's something here. So I can help speakers as well. And so that's what I've been doing ever since, both singers and speakers.
Well, that's beautiful. I want to dive into the professional and then, I mean, the musical, and then we'll go into the
Sure.
speaking. But you train opera singers too, don't you?
I don't train opera singers. I don't work in that. I don't work with that genre, but I can set someone up to study that,
Okay.
particularly with voice function training. But I focus mainly on more contemporary styles. So anything contemporary, I can certainly, work with that as well.
That's good. That's really good. I thought about that, and I thought about opera because that's the most extraneous type of, you know,
Yes.
voice
Yes. That
training and
and
pitch and all that. Now, when
yeah.
you're dealing with someone and you're teaching them, a lot of times people come straight from the chest, but they encourage you to speak or to sing from your diaphragm, right? From taking it all the way down to the core, down to your belly. Is that correct?
Well, firstly, I mean, I understand the focus on the belly, but for a different reason. We focus on the belly to get our low breath, and basically that's what the diaphragm does. It helps to sustain the low breath. So when we breathe in, our diaphragm flattens and it comes down into our abdomen and it pushes our abdominal wall out, which means that the downwards motion of the diaphragm is creating a vacuum-like effect for air to come into the bottom of the lungs. And then from there, we can more effectively valve it from our vocal cords, which is up here behind our Adam's apple.
Right.
So, yeah, so when we actually speak or sing, we're actually speaking from our vocal cords, but it's fueled by the air that's coming more effectively from the bottom of our lungs. So if
Oh,
we don't get our breath low, our larynx, which is the area that houses our vocal cords, it offsets that, and it causes the voice to not be happy and not function as well. So getting the breath low, bypassing the chest, is much more effective a way of supporting that system.
I work in Hollywood, so and my brother was in the music and entertainment industry for a long time, and
Great.
I see how they go through these runs and they have all of these vocal exercises, but
Yeah.
also how you have to let the voice rest. I couldn't imagine being a high-profile singer or performer having to do that day in and day out. The voice is also an instrument. What do you suggest that people do? Is it true? Drink the honey. I mean, drink the tea with honey, and just sit there and be quiet for a while. But how do you really work that muscle to maximize it, but also be gentle with it?
It's gee, there's so many questions in what you've just
Yeah.
stated there. There's where do I start? So basically, it takes a very fit voice to be able to withstand that level of training, just like an athlete. So if you look at someone who is at the Olympic level, they are doing the training every single day, and they're doing it for hours, and they do it every day so that there is consistency. The vocal cords do contain muscle, so we do have to train them not only to coordinate, but to also strengthen. And when we're strengthening any muscle in the body, we've got to be careful that we don't do too much of it and do it for too long. Because if I decided that I would like to get really fit in my arms, like I'd want to, build the muscle in my arms, I'm not going to try and bench press the heaviest weights that I could possibly find. That's not going to be helpful. That's going to be very destructive, and I'm going to strain something. And so the same occurs for our voice. When we're starting vocal exercises, we have to start off gently, and we have to start off in a way that we're with exercises that have been designed specifically for our voice. So generic exercises that, we say everyone has to do this exercise and everyone has to do that exercise. One of those exercises might be good for one voice, but very harmful for another voice because they deal with the voice in different ways. I'm being very open-ended here, but you have to start off gently. to build that strength. And you just do it gradually over time, just like you do with normal body strength. And then when you get to that more athletic level, which can take a lot of time, I'm talking years, it needs to be something that you have to maintain day in, day out to keep it going. Again, just like the body, if you stopped exercising, you're going to lose that strength in your muscles. So, and the voice is quite complex because it also we're having to create sound in order to cause certain coordinations in order to build on a solid foundation, but at the same time, if we're singing different genres, then there are different levels of
Right.
um yeah, like for example, music theater is incredibly athletic.
Mhm.
So whereas blues singing is not
Right.
so athletic. So it depends on what you actually want to do with your voice as well. So yeah, I
Well,
hope that answers your question.
it did, and that's good. I also heard that people get nodules and like calluses on their vocal cords too sometimes if they don't train it and treat it right. So you singers out there, aspiring singers, you take note because she is giving you the tips on how to really strengthen that muscle, that instrument that we call your vocal cords for music. So beyond music, I'm going to go into something. This may not be your zone of genius, but when people have a stroke,
Okay.
uh, and they lose their ability to speak.
Yeah.
Can a voice coach help them in that? I know that there are other type of like physical therapists.
Yeah.
I didn't think was a physical therapist, but can voice coaches help people also regain the ability to speak?
I think as far as voice coaches are concerned, it's really important to remember that it isn't our wheelhouse to be helping people that have had something pathologically affect their voice. Initially, we can be considered as part of the care team in the long term, but I tend to, because I do a little bit of rehabilitative work, but it's always on the end of a pathological process. So, for example, if one of my students have had nodules, I'll make sure that they have seen an ENT first and gotten a program with a speech pathologist or laryngologist to ensure that they're on the right track before they continue their training with me. A lot of the time, and I don't know what it's like in America, but in Australia, a lot of the time, people who have gone through something pathological, they've either had to have vocal rest or have some surgery, and then they go and see a speech pathologist to help them understand how to speak properly again or to sing properly again. But they only get seen for a short amount of time. So it's easy for people to forget how to do their exercises. So I can come along and I can ensure that they're doing their exercises properly, and I can continue them on from there. So I consider myself part of the care team, not the person who picks up where the surgeon or specialist
No,
leaves
no,
it.
no. That's good to know too. So now
Yeah.
let's springboard into professional speaking. Tell us
Yep.
how all these gifts and talents help the professional speaker, orator, salesperson, business person.
So how all of these help? Well, particularly when it comes to speaking, we generally don't think about how we sound unless we become self-conscious of it. In terms of, hey, for example, we've listened to the sound of our own voice on a recording and we go, oh, I don't like the way I sound. We become self-conscious. And we also become self-conscious when we're speaking in front of people and if we're not used to it. So, for example, you might be someone who is in a corporate environment, you've just been elevated to team leader and you have to address your team every day. Or you might be the first time on a stage speaking to a room of people, and all of a sudden you're questioning how effective your voice is going to come across. And I see voice training as, if you look at a photograph that is really, really old, back in the days before digital cameras, where we had the print photos, and a really old photo tends to be faded. The colors aren't quite so rich. The detail isn't there as much. So voice training, I think, is like taking that photo and redoing it again, giving it its vibrancy and color back and its detail. So when we're talking about voice training, you might feel that you have no problem with your voice. You might feel that you feel comfortable when you speak, but for some reason you tend to talk too fast, or you tend to sound a little bit more monotone, or you don't feel that you have access to the dynamic range that your voice should be capable of. Or you find yourself drifting towards down the bottom of your voice, and your voice becomes tired because of that. So there could be different aspects of your voice that are turning an audience off simply because your voice sounds like you're bored, or you're in trouble, or that you're having, yeah, I guess having issues, but also um, conveying a sense of not enough excitement about what you're saying.
Right.
So
Because
voice training,
you have to carry an audience. You know,
you
I'm
do.
a Toastmaster. And when you are giving
Yes,
a speech, you know, you have to have highs and lows. Sometimes you have to know when to pause. You have to know when
absolutely.
to take a breath. You have to inject some humor. You know,
Yes,
it may be some, and presentations can be long. I mean, sometimes you have speakers that are doing conferences, you know,
yeah,
and they're on stage, not 20 minutes, they might be on 2 hours.
yeah,
You know, so there's a lot that you need to take into consideration and engaging an audience with your
yes.
speech and with your conversation. Making sure that you have eye contact, that you have presence, again, that you're good and winded. Are some of those things key in speaking as well?
Absolutely, absolutely, and we would say that they're more the practical side of speaking as well. I sort of see that in the speaking craft camp. Uh, when people seek out a speaker coach, they're often being trained in how to put the keynote together, how to work pauses into your voice, how to look people in the eye. What is your body doing? That's one way of looking at how you present to an audience. Another way is in your voice training, and that is learn how to take a low breath to keep your larynx stable and your voice out of trouble. How to shape your vowels in a way where your voice is going to sound more resonant, and it's going to sound more powerful. So it'll bring presence. And research shows that we connect with people that have warmer sounding voices. So shaping your vowels helps that as well. So there's all those aspects of learning to speak. I've just named a few. And then there's also the personal level, how you actually humanly engage with people. And what I say to people is, and I know it sounds silly, but imagine that you're giving the audience a huge hug. It's not about you, it's about what you're imparting to them and how excited you are to pass that on to them, and just to make someone's day. You have absolutely no idea what they're thinking. The blank faces don't mean anything. And once we start to put labels on those and say, oh, that person must be bored, or that person isn't responding to me, so they must be, they must think I'm terrible. Rather than going down that track, assume that they're being, they're just sitting there staring at you because they're quite intrigued and they're quite tuned in. So changing the mental game, and also taking the focus off where you think you might be terrible,
Right.
can make all the difference, because then it helps to it helps all those other practical aspects to flow.
Well, I think about politicians, unfortunately or fortunately,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But how they have to stay on point, they have to stay on message, they have to
Yes.
regurgitate the same thing over and over again. But again, you're connecting to a different audience, so you have to have that feel and that presence. Also, filler words. People do not take the time to listen to what they say. I'll again listen to television personalities, or
Mhm.
I will hear politicians and the um, um,
Mm.
and the young people like every other word, like. It is so annoying. To me, it's distracting. I sat and watched a television program, and it was one of my favorite politicians on there. I think he had 27 ums. Sometimes people inject those in there because they're thinking about what they want to say next. They want to be sure that they choose the right words. They don't get themselves caught up in some Spengali. But take a pause, take a breath, and practice. Would you re emphasize how important it is to practice what you're going to preach before you get in front of an audience.
Oh, yes, it is so important too, because when you're in front of an audience, it's a game changer. Your eyes take in so much detail, and we don't realize how much that detail impacts us. When we're in our comfortable space or when we're with friends, we don't tend to think about that because we're not self-conscious about how we look and how we sound. But when it comes to being in front of an audience, it's going to put us on the back foot straight away if we're not used to being there. So we have to practice in different ways. I often say to people, if you're going to practice, start practicing in safe ways initially. So you're practicing in front of a mirror, or you're practicing in your own space and you're imagining the audience there. And then take it up a notch. Practice in front of a group of friends and get their critique or get them to sit there as if they're looking bored or something. And, practice in environments that aren't just encouraging. Yes, at first do that so it boosts your confidence, but also practice in environments where no one is paying attention to you or noise is going on or things are grabbing at your attention, just so that you can acclimatize yourself to different scenarios. And it could just be that you're not giving a whole speech in those practice times. You're practicing just being in those spaces and being in professional speaker mode and allowing your brain to connect with that environment. And the more you can look for that, the better. But your presentation itself, it needs to be practiced. And I often suggest to people that dot points are really, really good. And yes, practice writing out what you're going to say, but memorize what your dot points are, but see them as dot points. Don't see them as a statement that you have to read out and then talk about. It's
Right.
there to jog your memory. And the more you can practice seeing that list in your head and seeing the essence of what you want to say, it'll help you to remember the words.
Because you can be thrown off. Someone
Mm-hmm.
can interject with a question. You can lose your train of thought.
Yes.
There's a lot of things that can happen during a presentation. Well, these
Yes.
are incredible, incredible gifts. So tell my brains what they have to look forward to as a coach and working with you.
Well, I love working with people. I just love meeting different people, and I'm very committed to seeing how someone ticks. I love analyzing a voice and hearing what's going on from a voice perspective. So when people come to see me, I'm very friendly and encouraging, but I'm also very, very honest because that's why I studied what I did so that I could, get to the bottom of people's issues. I love to uh, well, let me put it this way. Think of me as like a voice physio. And when you go to like a physiotherapist or a chiropractor, they'll get you to stand and they'll be behind you and they'll say, okay, turn your head to the left and then turn your head to the right. And then they're looking at the way different ways your body responds to that and the way your spine is working, bend over, all that sort of stuff. Well, I'm doing the same when I listen to a voice, but I do that through sound. And once I understand what's going on, then I design exercises to start building into that voice and to bring it into better balance. So if I could give you an example of what I sounded like before voice training, if I just let all that go, I would have a more shallow sounding voice and a more girly sounding voice and a little bit breathy and airier. Most people think that this is a normal sounding voice, but at the end of the day, it's a faded photograph version of what my voice is actually capable of. So in this case, my vocal cords are sitting a little bit too far apart. So I need to start engaging them properly so that they can start to support my voice better. The voice is supported by three main areas: the breath, the vocal cords, and the way we shape our vowels. So I'm using all those three components to make my voice sound the way that it does today. And I can last. Like, for example, I went to a couple of networking events last Friday during the day. I think I spoke for about 4 hours straight in very, very noisy environments, and my voice wasn't tired afterwards. It was still very, very well put together. And in fact, I've recorded myself and I'm going to be doing a post onto social media and releasing that because it it speaks for itself, actually getting voice training, but I digress. So what people can expect from me is that I will analyze their voice properly and give them exercises that moves them towards those three key components, but in a way that addresses it in the right order for their voice. And then what I do is I start to help people understand how to put that into context, whether it's through their speaking or whether it's through their singing. And at the same time, I work very intuitively with each person because we're all human beings. We all bring different personalities, different experiences, and different ways of speaking, I think,
We
to the
do.
table. And it's really important that we include all of that at the same time. And how we think in our mind, uh, we need to take that into consideration. If someone's not ready to really make that step in their voice, then that's fine. I'm not going to push that. But at the end of the day, that has to be recognized.
Well, public speaking is one of people's biggest fears.
Yep.
They do not like to do that. I don't know if they're intimidated by the audience, they're
Yeah.
not sure of their message of what they're going to say. It's just, it can be very debilitating for a lot of people. So let's
Yeah.
ask you some fun questions. How about
Okay.
something a little bit different?
Okay.
If your words had an odor, what would they smell like?
That is such a cool question. If my words had an odor, who would they smell like?
Or what would they smell like?
Or what would they smell like? Okay, that's an easy question to smell like. I would say chocolate and roses.
Ooh, that's pretty yummy.
First thing that came to my mind.
If you had a different career, what else would you choose to do?
Something in the fashion or beauty industry.
Oh, I can see that. I can see that. If you were an appliance in the kitchen, what appliance would you be?
A mix master.
A mix master. Why would you want to be a mix master?
Yes, I like creating things. I
Well,
like taking ingredients and stirring them.
absolutely. If you could have a conversation with a 25-year-old self, what would you say to yourself?
Oh, that's a loaded question. What would I say to myself? I would say that the things that you worry about now are not going to matter in another 25 years, and you will be fine.
Okay. Good. What would you say to an aspiring speaker or singer?
What would I say to an aspiring speaker or singer? Understand firstly that you have a voice and that it is unique to everyone else. And finding your unique voice is the most important thing. And if it's something that you really, really want, be prepared to work hard.
Well, hard work and dedication, that's the recipe for success. And you have been such a great guest. Please tell my brains how to get in contact with you. I'd love for them to work with you. Have a consultation. Let her hear your voice. Let her hear what the possibilities are. Maybe there is something that you are suppressing within inside yourself, a gift or a fear that you might be able to overcome. She's omnipresent anywhere in the world. See how we're connecting? I'm in San Diego. She's in Australia. I'd love for you to work with her. Please tell my brains how to get in contact with you.
Well, they can visit my website. I have two websites. I have www.nowyourtalking.com.au and also www.rachelpeachvocalstudio.com.au. And you can get in contact with me either way through my contact forms there. Um, I also have on my Now You're Talking website, um, on the homepage, there's a little widget there that's in the shape of an audio, like a microphone. And you can actually click on that and leave me a voice message, and I will actually analyze your voice for you and get back to you.
Wow.
And yeah, so you can get like a free analysis. And it's just a short little message that you can leave me. You can read something, or you can just tell me a bit about yourself. And it would be my pleasure to get back to you. And yeah, and
That's
just
pretty
help
cool.
you on your journey.
That's pretty cool, Brains. I would take advantage of that. I really, really would. Thank you so much, Rachel, for being here on the edge with us. Me, 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 me. Maybe I'll go in there and check it out because I'm a poet. I'm a spoken word poet. So I know how it is to command an audience with your voice. But also, Brains, may I offer you a suggestion? Be careful with your words, the things that you say. Make sure that they taste like chocolate and roses. Thank you so much for being here on the edge with me. Go in, listen to other edgy conversations. We've got a boatload of them, about 2,000 plus. Love, like, share, and subscribe. If you know someone that is in the area or need that want a vocal coach, that is a speaker or presenter in business, please give us a call, take a look, follow up. If you can't get her, get me, I'll get her for you. Thank you so much for being here on the edge. You are the best.